Lowe again. Our guest today is a well-established actor and an author. He served in both capacities for his widely acclaimed monodrama, Confessions of a Nightingale, about Tennessee Williams, and he has now written his autobiography. Please join us in welcoming Ray Strickland. And now, here's your puckish man of the half hour, Skip E. Lowe.
Well, you know, angels and demons. Ooh, that's strong, isn't it? Hollywood is strong, too. One actor this is about an actor who's took a Hollywood journey. His name is Ray Strickland. How are you, Ray?
Pretty good, thank you. Glad to be here.
You've had an interesting journey of Hollywood and New York theater. And from Texas, where in Texas?
Houston.
You grew up in Houston.
Right.
You just wrote a book called Angels and Demons. Wow. That title is really...
Well, it's really, when I was playing Tennessee Williams, it was really sort of taken from Tennessee's works.
Oh, really?
He was always complaining about, he was afraid if he got rid of his demons, he'd lose his angels.
Oh.
As my life progressed, I figured if I got rid of my demons, I'd find my angels. So that's sort of where the title came from.
Grew up in Texas, went to the theater in Texas, or you directly went to New York?
No, I did amateur theatricals in Houston.
In Houston.
And then I went to New York and happened to win
and
an
met
acting
very
scholarship.
powerful people after you got this scholarship in the theater. Right. Where was it?
The theater scholarship was a old school called Theodore Irvin Studio for the Theater.
Okay.
And Cornell Wilde and Ann Baxter had been former students. Mm-hmm. And this is the late 40s I'm talking about.
Right.
And I auditioned with, ironically, a Tennessee Williams one-act, Mooney's Kid Don't Cry.
Uh-huh.
And I won the scholarship, the Cornell Wilde scholarship.
Uh-huh.
And
it was a Cornell Wilde?
Yes.
Oh, really? I interviewed him at the end of his... He was wonderful. He was a great... Did you ever meet him after?
I never met him. No.
Never met him? At all the years you've been in town?
Been at parties he was at, but
yes.
I never met him.
Ray Strickland, tell me, first theater job after that you met the first star. Who was it? What was the very first big star that you worked? Because you went right into it.
Well, the first really big, my first Broadway break was a Moss Hart play called The Climate of Eden.
Right.
And the young girl who played one of the leads in it was brought over from England, mm-hmm. and she turned out to be the marvelous actress Rosemary Harris.
Wonderful.
And we played brother and sister.
Uh-huh.
And John Cromwell, who was a great movie director,
right,
but he had unfortunately got caught up in the witch hunts of the day,
uh-huh.
and so he went back to acting and played my father in the show. And he had directed Bette Davis in Of Human Bondage and
wow.
Since You Went Away,
uh-huh.
and it's a marvelous film, and in The King of Siam.
Right. Theater, you did a lot of theater there in New York, and then come to Hollywood. As a young man, tangled up with these strange, all kinds of wonderful people, stars, society people, all kinds. Tell me.
Well, I made my film debut in a Paramount picture called The Proud and Profane with Deborah Carr.
Ah, and is this it right here?
No, that's I don't have a shot.
Oh, you don't have it?
There.
Okay.
And William Holden, but we filmed that in the Virgin Islands. But from that tiny bit, I was brought to Hollywood, mm-hmm. and my dearest friend at the time was Phyllis Gates,
right?
Who, just as I was arriving, married Rock Hudson.
Uh-huh.
So I became very close in that milieu. And,
Right.
My first celebrity party was at their wedding reception. And I remember meeting Luella Parsons and the leading...
And how old were you at the time? Very
Oh,
young.
well, no, I wasn't that young, really. I was about 24, but I looked about 17.
Right.
So everyone thinks I was a child actor, but I really was older than I looked. And but Susan Hayward was there.
And you met James Dean
Well, Jimmy I knew in New York.
in New York.
Yeah,
When he was doing the Playhouse 90, or was it?
Well, no, it was really even before that. We were both starting. It was in 1951, and we were both brand new to New York. And just met on the rounds because we used to compete for the same roles all
Right.
the time. And we became quite close in those early days before he became a movie star.
You look very much like him. I want to show this. Look, get close up this. Look at you here. This is Diana Varsi, isn't it?
Diane Varsi,
Varsi,
right.
I
And
love
that's
her. This
Gary
is in
Cooper.
10th North Fredericks.
10 North Frederick with Gary
One of my
Cooper.
favorite films.
Yeah, that was my best, I think.
With Gary Cooper.
Right.
And matter of fact, you were nominated.
I had a Golden Globe nomination for that.
You did.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. You remind me of a Jimmy Dean type. You were there.
Well,
That's right.
the publicity all said, is this the new James Dean? Well, of course.
What studio was it? 10 North
Fox.
Fredericks? Was it
20th Century
Fox?
Of
You
course,
had
there
some
were
great
no-
experiences at Fox.
Oh, yeah.
I was there too for a while. I did a few movies there. But tell me about your experiences at Fox. Some
Well,
of
of
it.
course, I loved being under contract.
This is stock contract.
Right.
Going to school and studying.
No.
You did- okay.
I was a little above
Okay.
that. And a featured contract.
Oh,
And,
okay.
I loved being under contract, first of all, of the security, and it was also like a second family. And, I don't know, I got to meet everybody, Marilyn and Clifton Webb and
He was one of my favorites.
Dorothy McGuire.
What kind of guy was Clifton Webb?
Well, he wasn't at all acerbic as he played in most of his films. And we became quite friendly, and he'd invite me over to dinner, and then we'd go to different parties together. And I, excuse me,
It's okay.
I'll never forget. He got Jill St. John and myself and Ron Ely, who later became Tarzan,
Right.
and David Nelson. He got us tickets to Noel Coward's opening in Nude with Violin here. And he and Clifton were good friends. So, of course, I was elated, and we got to go backstage and meet Mr. Coward.
Right.
So the next day, Clifton couldn't wait to hear what his young charges thought of Mr. Coward. And unfortunately, Ron Ely spoke first and indicated that he thought Noel was a little swishy, I guess would be
Right.
the word. Excuse me. Clifton blew his top, stormed off the set, wanted to have Ron fired, but it was too late for that. But anyway.
Marilyn Monroe. Tell me about Marilyn Monroe. Came into your rescue on the movie that you were making or something.
We were doing The Lost World, and Michael Rennie was one of the stars, and the great Claude Rains, and Jill St. John again. But I arrived at the studio late one day, and no one was working. And I said, Mr. Rains, what are they, lighting the set or what? And he said, oh, no, my dear boy, we actors are on strike. And I said, what for? We just got over a real strike.
Right.
And he said, well, the studio, in an effort to save money, have taken away our coffee urn, which is pretty silly. And because we always had free coffee on the set. So Michael Rennie refused to work and got the other actors to not,
Just for that.
Just because
That's
of that.
funny.
So he called Marilyn Monroe, who was shooting Let's Make Love on a nearby soundstage. And
That was one of her last movies, isn't
Oh,
it? Let's
I-
Make Love. Oh, no,
almost.
No,
Her
no,
next
no,
to last,
no,
I think.
Next to her last, yeah. Go ahead.
And Marilyn, he told Marilyn what was happening. Well, she thought that was hysterical. And she said, well, I'll get your coffee back. She said, I won't work either. Well, of course, they never knew when she was going to work anyway, so believe me, we got our coffee back pronto.
20th Century Fox had it. It's great. So, did you ever see Peggy Cummings on the set there?
No, that was before my time.
Yeah, I was there then. See, I was before you then, even, really. Lee Marvin, tell me about Lee Marvin. Offered you a drink or something. Tell me about that. I was reading about that.
I guest starred on Lee when Lee was doing a series called M Squad.
You did a lot of TV things,
A lot of
didn't
television,
you?
yeah.
Television, yeah. Go ahead.
And it was basically a two-character script. I'm sorry, I've got
That's
something in my
okay.
throat.
That's okay. Lee Marvin's a great guy, isn't he?
He was, and quite a reputation as a womanizing boozer.
Oh.
He invited me, he and his stand-in invited me into his dressing room after the shoot for a drink.
Uh-huh.
And after we'd had a couple, he disappeared. And when he came back, he had this huge dildo sticking out of his pocket.
He did?
And I didn't know how to react. Was he trying to shock me? Was it a joke? Was he trying to turn me on? Christ, I didn't.
He was macho.
I left.
Yeah, I understand.
I left shortly thereafter.
So tell me, Ray, about going back to Michael Moriarty. You worked in the theater with
Yes,
Michael.
that was later.
A great actor.
Great actor, yes.
I love him.
Still is, I
Yes.
hope. Yes, I was in Houston at the Alley Theater doing the night Thoreau spent in jail. And Michael was playing Thoreau, and I was playing his older brother.
Deborah Carr, working with Deborah Carr. What a lady, huh?
Yeah, but that was my very first film, and I only had a moment with her.
How did Ray Strickland at that time felt working with this great English?
Oh, well, she couldn't have been sweeter, and Thelma Ritter was also in the scene.
I love Thelma Ritter.
And I played this young shell-shocked Marine, and as I'm being let off the ship, I see this nurse.
I remember that scene quite well.
Two nurses, as a matter of fact, and it was Miss Carr and Thelma Ritter. And I mistakenly think Deborah is my mother, and go screaming at her mother, and they carry me off to the booby hatch.
Let's get back to Tent North Fredericks, one of my favorite films. Diana Varsi, Gary Cooper. Diana Varsi had a lot of problems in Hollywood here. She didn't like Hollywood.
No, she was
in Peyton Place.
Well, that was her first film, and Tent North Frederick was her second. I don't think she was prepared for when Peyton Place was released and she got an Oscar nomination, she wasn't ready for the onslaught of attention that came her way. And she was very much a rebel and went against everything the the publicity department wanted her to do. But I loved her. We got along great.
Shelley Winters loved her too. I met her at Shelley's house just before.
Oh, really?
Just before.
Diane made a comeback film, Wild in the Streets.
Wild in the Streets with
Shelley,
Christopher Jones and Shelley.
Right.
Diane Varsi was a good lady. Good actress too.
Died way too young.
Yeah, Betty Davis. Come on, Betty Davis in Ray Strickland's life. Now, Ray Strickland. You came from Texas to New York, and you came to Hollywood, and all these wonderful, great actresses like Joan Crawford and Betty Davis. Tell me about Betty Davis first. How did she get into your life? Playhouse 90?
No. I met Betty. I went on the set when I first arrived in Hollywood. She was doing a film at Columbia called Storm Center. And I went on the set with my agent, and I just was watching. And little did I know that I would be cast in her next film, which turned out to be for MGM, and it was a picture called The Catered Affair.
Catered Affair, of
Debbie
course.
Reynolds and Ernest Borgnine.
Yes.
And I was on that for 7 weeks playing her son, and didn't get to know her terribly well at that time, but she was always very cordial. Then, a couple of years later, I was signed to co-star with her on a Schlitz Playhouse television show, again playing her son, but in a leading part this time. And from that encounter, we became very, very close, and she would invite me to her home for weekends. And
that's in Newport Beach,
at that time,
in Laguna and all that.
Yeah.
Look at this here. This is Ray Strickland and Betty Davis. Look at that.
That was years later, however.
Yeah, but look how good you look there. You did Jesse James, or didn't you do something about...
I played the lead in a film at Fox called Young Jesse James.
Young Jesse James?
Yes.
And then there was another one, another Western.
The Plunderers.
The Plunderers, here it is.
Yeah, I got a Golden Globe Best Supporting Actor nomination for that.
God, you really look like Jimmy Dean there, too. Jimmy Dean, tell me about Jimmy Dean in New York. Togetherness.
Well, we started out...
Is it true what they're saying now, Ray?
About him being homosexual?
Yeah.
I can't vouch for that. I think he certainly had problems.
He had problems.
If you call that a problem.
Right.
But he was certainly affectionate toward me and kissed me once. So
He did kiss you once? This is Debbie Reynolds and Ernest Borgnine here,
Yeah.
and this is the movie you did with
Catered Affair.
Catered Affair. That's great. Ernest Borgnine, tough actor. Tell me about him. Was he a drinker? Or
I didn't see that side at all.
Uh-huh.
I remember he was up for the Academy Award for Marty when we were doing this film.
Uh-huh.
And the night he won the award, he didn't have to come to work till late the next day, and Betty Davis had a big sign. He was of Italian descent, and then Anna Magnani had won the Best Actress.
Right. One of my favorite actresses
Yeah,
in the
so-
whole world.
Another Italian. And so Betty Davis had a big sign posted, "Italians go home," and put on his dressing room door.
Joan Crawford. I'm going to get into all these demons of these wonderful actresses. God. Joan Crawford.
I only met Miss Crawford
Here.
once, and it was the evening
Can we
that
get-
photograph. She had just been named the best dressed actress in films,
Uh-huh.
and she said she wouldn't come to the party unless they gave her an award. So
Let's get back to this picture again. Look how young. Get a close-up of this. Look at Ray. Look how young you were. God, you were
Wow.
very young.
we all were one.
Wow, you look great. You remember that moment right now? When you look at this
Oh,
picture, what do you
sure.
think of the...
Oh, it was at the very beginning of my career, and suddenly there I was with the Queen of Hollywood, practically. You know,
Right,
or
right.
the movie star, anyway.
You used to go out a lot to McCombs, Cyril's, and all those places. How was Hollywood then?
Well, I didn't frequent those places. I remember Rona Barrett, who's a famous gossip columnist,
Right.
taking me to, I believe it was a Mocambo, it could have been Ciro's,
Uh-huh.
for Bobby Darin's opening, introducing him to Hollywood.
I think that would be Cyril's.
Ciro's.
Yeah.
And I remember that.
Uh-huh. Bobby Darin, what a great guy. I met him in New York years ago.
I never,
he was,
I
he
never
was
knew
just
him.
young.
Yeah.
Ray, you've been around Hollywood a long time. You knew Tennessee Williams very, very well. You start doing a one-man show of Tennessee Williams called,
Confessions of a Nightingale.
tell me about the Confessions of a Nightingale.
Well, I had retired from acting for 12 years.
Did you really? Oh, that's right, you became a PR.
I became a publicist for Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, and
Was it tough for you, Ray Strickland, to give up acting
it almost killed me.
to another actor and give them work?
Yeah, it was very difficult at first because I still
How
wanted
did you
to
handle
act.
that, Ray? How did you?
Well,
It's
I had to eat,
Uh-huh.
and it turned out to be a good 12 years because I got myself out of debt, and then I wanted to act again, and
Who's some of the people you say? Joshua Gabor, too?
no, I didn't. Well, we did work on a project with the dreaded Miss Gabor.
She's kind of interesting, isn't she?
Oh, well, she's interesting,
Yeah.
yeah.
You had some great experiences with her, Ray? Tell me one, exactly, if you have one.
We were handling Rubik's Cube, which was a Hungarian game. I don't know if you remember that puzzle that came out.
Yes, I think so.
And
Go
the
ahead.
toy company had already contracted Miss Gabor to be the spokesperson for the game.
Right.
When we came aboard as the publicist, and I'll never forget, had to go up to her house to go over the guest list for this party she was going to throw to introduce the toy.
Right.
And she said, "Bring all your stars' names." So I brought our list of stars' names
Right.
to go over who she wanted invited.
Right.
So I just read off the first name that happened to be on my list, and it was the wonderful, Cesar Romero.
Cesar Romero.
And she said, "Oh, no, darling. I don't want no B-movie stars at my party."
Oh.
And then Glenn Ford, no, he drinks all my liquor. He never sends me thank you flowers, you know. Oh, it went on and on and on. It just, I did not like her at all.
Uh-huh. She was a tough lady. Tell me about Confessions. Let's get back to Tennessee Williams.
Well, that's what brought me back to the theater with a bang, shall we say.
Right.
And I've played it now for, over 1,500 performances.
Really?
And it returned me completely to the theater. I gave up the PR job.
You do love the theater, don't you, Ray?
Yes,
I'm looking
yes,
at you.
yes.
That's your first love, isn't it?
That's my first love.
Because you left that Houston as a young man, theater.
Right.
You can never leave that. That's
No.
the love. Go ahead, Ray.
No, it's brought me my greatest success, I would say. And won many acting awards for it, and it changed my life completely. Not only financially, but just giving me back my what I
Tennessee
wanted
Williams,
to do.
he has come to see your performances many times. Has he graced you with this?
No, he had died, unfortunately, before I did this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, he died in 80.
Tennessee died before
He
you
died
did this?
in 83, and I didn't open this until 85.
Ah, but you knew him.
Oh, yes. When I was a very young man, I typed script revisions for him when he was writing Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Right. When you prepared for doing the Nightingale, did you look at movies of his talk shows with...
No, I didn't. I saw some after I had started on it.
Right.
But I listened to a recording he had done, reading his poetry and scenes from his plays. But if I had tried to imitate him, the show would have been 4 hours long because he talked very slow. So I did my own essence of him that I hope worked.
I've seen it several times. I thought it was just wonderful. I came in with Bobby Morse, who did True After.
Oh, I know.
And he just loved you.
Yeah.
I thought you were... And I knew Tennessee very well. Ray Strickland, this Angels and Demons, this book is brand new. It's going to have a book signing at the...
Book Soup on June 10th.
June 10th at the Soup Book. And it's going all over.
Yeah.
And I tell you, this is all of your Hollywood journey, isn't it?
Right. And New York.
In New York. But tell me, Ray, about Rock Hudson. You said something about Rock Hudson in this book.
Well, of course, as I said earlier...
Even Inquirer did something about it, inserts. The Inquirer?
I'm sorry to say, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, Rock I met when I first arrived because he married my best friend, Phyllis.
Right.
And so I was around them a great deal in my early days. I did not know him in the latter years, although we would occasionally see each other at a party or something.
Right.
But I always found him to be wonderful and gentlemanly, and, you know, and was devastated when he died with AIDS, of course.
Yes. Henry Fonda.
Well,
you were at his house the night that he got
his
the
Oscar.
Oscar.
Yeah. Well, he was my prized client when I was in the PR.
Oh, so that's when you were in the PR. He was your client.
Yeah. And so I spent more time, I guess, with Mr. Fonda than any other client.
So Ray, as an actor, as a publicist, it's really the same practically, is it or not? Tell me.
Well,
you're dealing with.
You're around.
You're around the
famous
stars,
people,
famous
maybe,
people,
but you don't get the kick if you really want to act.
Yes.
I mean that's something PR.
Well, tell me about the evening when Henry Fonda, the night when he got his Oscar at the house. What kind of excitement?
It was. We assumed that if he won, that there would be an outpouring of the press and photographers arriving at the house.
Right.
Which, of course, did happen, and Jane Fonda had accepted his award for him and said, "We'll be right over, Dad." And she was married to Tom Hayden then. And sure enough, about 45 minutes later, they arrived, followed by the paparazzi.
Right.
And Jane, Hank was very frail, and Jane presented him with the award, and tears started to come to his eyes. It was a very moving moment.
She's a wonderful lady, though.
I don't know her well, but I certainly admire her.
Yeah, I do too. Richard Brooks, Screaming Battles with Elizabeth Taylor and Debbie Reynolds. What's that all about? Screaming Battles on the set?
Yeah, well, when we did Catered Affair, Brooks hadn't wanted to cast Debbie because she at that time was primarily known as a musical comedy.
Musical comedy, yeah.
And he didn't. This was a dramatic role, and he wasn't sure she could handle it. But she was so popular that the head of the studio insisted that she be used.
This is at MGM?
Right. And one day she had just become engaged to Eddie Fisher, and he had given her a very expensive engagement ring, and one day before we were to start shooting, she forgot to take the ring off. And we were playing this poor Bronx family, so the diamond didn't the diamond didn't go over too well with Mr. Brooks. So he proceeded to call her every four-letter name in the book, and she went off the set screaming, and she called Elizabeth, who was shooting on the next sound stage, and complained, and Elizabeth said, well, the same thing happened to me when he directed me in the last time I saw Paris, and so it...
Did he commit suicide?
No, I don't think so.
Is he still alive?
No, he...
Now, what director I am thinking that he was watching television one night, and he was sitting there with his wife, and he looked at the news, and he says, honey, I don't want to live anymore in this world to listen to this news. He goes into the bedroom, gets the gun, puts it to the mouth, and shoot himself. What director did that? Is a very famous director, and I've been trying to find out.
Oh, I don't...
You don't... And I thought it was Richard Brooks. No, he's still alive then, Richard.
No, Richard isn't alive, but
he isn't,
he didn't end that way.
He didn't end that way.
No.
He was a tough director.
Yeah, but a good one.
Yeah. Ila Pino, one of my favorite actresses. Anna Magnani, Ila Pino, Betty Davis. You've dealt with some very strong ladies, my dear.
Yeah.
Tell me about Ila Pino.
I played opposite Ida on a four-star playhouse called That Woman, and it was the story of a demented woman who was losing her mind, and she had come to this farmhouse to recuperate, and she meets this young farm boy, which I was playing, and it was a story of their growing infatuation. And the townspeople think she's raped the young boy, when of course she hasn't. But and that was that. But all during the shoot, she loved young talent, and after every scene, she would say to the cameraman, "Now make sure you get a good close-up of Ray."
Oh, isn't that nice?
Which was very nice, and I was never better photographed in my life.
Until
the cameraman finally said, "Ida, you're the star." So
yeah. She was a great director too.
Oh yes,
she was great. You became good friends.
Yeah,
close to the end, practically, right? Ray, Angels and Demons, hard book to. Was it difficult for you to write this book?
In a way,
What was so difficult for Ray Strickland to write?
When I started it, which was only about a year ago now,
Is that all? Just wow.
I had since I'm not world famous, I had no idea that it would be published. And I was really writing it as therapy for myself and trying to figure out where my life had gone right and wrong. And so I really, that's how the book started. And otherwise, if I'd really thought I was going to write it for a publisher, I don't think I would have been as honest as I am in the book.
Has it been hard for you, though?
Well, actually, it was very therapeutic writing.
Really?
I finally figured out after I put the last exclamation point on the book that I was more successful than I thought I was.
Right. You realized who you were.
And I gained a little...
You never really looked into that mirror, did you, Ray? To stop and say, Ray Strickland, take a breath. You know? Sometimes we don't do that.
No.
But you're looking at this Angels and Demons right now. I'm seeing that. This is a great, great cover. Look at this cover. I just love it. I'm going to read it all.
Well,
Thank you.
I think it's a good read.
Thank you, Ray.
And it's an honest read.
It is an honest. You feel honest.
Brutally honest.